This is an Audi A5 Sportback. It's the all-in-one kind of car. Imagine it like this: the A4 is just the soap, and the A5 is the wash and wax combo. It creates a slightly better final product. It's the you want a coupe but you have kids kind of car. Fitted with proper Quattro and the same engine from a Golf GTI, it's got the ingredients to make a good car. So let's take a tour, then blast it down some B roads. My name's Tom, and this is Paragon Cars. Let's go. Up front is the EA 888 Gen 3 2-litre turbo. Standard, this engine makes 248 horsepower and a very respectable 380 Nm of torque. Certainly ample for everyday use, but this car has a stage 1 tune, taking it all the way up to 300 horsepower and a whopping 480 Nm of torque. 0 to 60 is now dealt with in just 4.6 seconds. But what about the real world? What about the 30 to 70 sprint? Let's find out. So, how did we do then? Well, I thought it would be pretty nippy, but with a 30 to 70 time of just 4.45 seconds, it did it in the same time as a Mercedes A35 AMG. So as you can see, this is actually a pretty serious bit of kit. The inside is where Audi almost always shines, and for me this is the best interior they've ever done. It's functionally perfect as you can navigate through everything in the infotainment with just the scroll wheel. No fiddly touchscreens here. Even the steering wheel is perfectly laid out whilst maintaining a sporty look. These are just the standard dials, so not as pretty as the full virtual cockpit, but it's still perfectly good enough. The screen is sharp and it still has all the information you'd ever need. The seats are the upgraded full leather option and they really are nice to sit in. We'll see how comfortable they are later, but let's take a look at my favourite part, the design of the HVAC system. It's gotta be one of the best I've ever seen. The controls themselves display the temperature within the dial. You then have capacitive buttons that display their function as you run your finger over them. Select open and the air blade on the passenger side blows a high volume of air, whilst only making a whisper of noise. The back seats provide adequate space for someone under 6 feet. Anyone above that will touch their head on the ceiling though. Then in terms of amenities, you get your own climate control and a very squishy armrest. The extended ambient lighting comes through to the rear as well, making this a very pleasant car to spend a lot of time in. Then boot-wise, the A5 Sportback comes with an electric tailgate as standard and contains 480 litres of very usable space with the rear seats folded up. Fold them down and you have just under 1,000 litres of seamless floor, enough for pretty much anything you'd ever need to carry. And beyond the boot, you'd normally get two very quiet, pretty underwhelming exhausts on this model. Except, like the engine, the previous owner decided to add some noise. Let's have a listen. Certainly sounds fruitier than the standard car, but let's get on the road and see how this all-in-one package performs. So, what's this Audi A5 like to drive? Well, we're going to start off around town, then move on to the motorway, and then do some twisty road driving. Firstly, the suspension going over bumps. This is the S-Line model, so it's fitted with lower, stiffer springs over the Sport and the SE. That's not to say it's stiff at all, however. This is still a comfort-orientated car. It just feels slightly more controlled over the bumps. Steering at lower speeds is typical Audi, really light and not too fast. In terms of parking, you don't actually get anything as standard on these A5s. This car's only got parking sensors, and I have to say it would be nice to have a reverse camera. Because this has got a coupe body shape, it means the view out the back is pretty small. But it's definitely not the hardest car to park. The turning circle is actually really good in this car. Coming out of junctions, this S-tronic gearbox, it's the same gearbox that they use in the GTI, the Golf R, the Leon Cupra, the Audi S3, and it does a great job of blending gears together. That, combined with the Quattro system, makes this a pretty quick car off the line. Okay, we're going to reset the trip computer now and see what MPG we get driving around town on the motorway and some twisty roads. Okay, we're at a national speed limit, so I'll put the car into dynamic. This will drop a couple of gears, make the steering heavier, and make the throttle response even sharper. And I can use these Boy Racer paddles that don't actually come with the car. Previous owner added them. And you can see this is a pretty quick car. That Quattro all-wheel drive combined with a Stage 1 GTI engine makes this basically like a Golf R with an A5 body. It's pretty cool, really. For now, we're going to leave it in efficiency and see what MPG we get on the motorway. Okay, what about road noise and wind noise then? Well, even though we are riding on 20-inch wheels, which are pretty big for this car, there's still almost no road noise. Audi are always really good at ironing out things like that in their cars. But this is especially good, considering we're riding on their low and stiffened suspension as well. I don't know if you know, but this Audi A5 is actually one of the most aero-efficient cars in Audi's lineup. With a drag coefficient of just 0.32, it means there's almost no wind noise from the front of the car. And the wing mirrors have been designed specifically to get rid of wind noise. You can see there's little fins on the side. So doing long journeys in this car is really pleasant. In terms of visibility, well, it's okay. It's obviously not going to be as good as an Audi A4. Because the windows are actually frameless, the A pillar is quite thin, and the B pillar is still quite far back because you've got that coupe body shape. So it means looking in your blind spot is actually not that hard to do. Plus the wing mirrors come with this little curved bit of glass so you can see in your blind spot anyway. In terms of comfort, these have got to be some of the comfiest seats I've ever sat in. They've got so much padding in them, so you can just like, I mean, it feels like you're sitting on a sofa basically. You can adjust the pitch of the base of the seat quite a lot, so you get tons of under thigh support. There's also a little extendable bit, so you can get even more. And the seats themselves hug you quite well, so you're not flopping about in the corners, but they still have quite a lot of give in them, so you can move around in them over long journeys. In terms of MPG, they say this A5 will get about 44 to 48 on the combined cycle. And that kind of makes sense because of the Quattro system and the fact this is slightly heavier than something like a Golf GTI. You could expect a little bit less economy, but it's not going to be a massive difference. Remember, this is a slipperier car. The interior quality though is where Audi really shines. All the materials are so consistent, nothing ever feels cheap. You've got squidgy material here, here, down here, everywhere basically in the cabin. Apart from maybe right at the bottom of the door cards. But even then, the plastics they do use are really high quality, so you can't really visually see that they're of a lower quality than anything else in the cabin. And the design, I think this is one of the best designed cabins ergonomically in the industry. It was a year before we introduced touchscreens into these cars, and I just think this scroll wheel is so much better functionally when you're moving than a touchscreen. You don't have to faff around with any menus with your finger. You don't have to even take your eyes off the road for more than a couple of seconds. Audi, please go back to this system. It is so much better. Okay, coming off the motorway, we only managed 33.8 miles to the gallon, but you can see it's still going up, and I think we just didn't do a long enough stint. So realistically, you'd probably see like 45 miles to the gallon, which is pretty close to what they claim. Right, let's see how this car handles some twistier roads. On to some twistier roads then. As you saw before, this is as quick as an A35, so it's actually got the performance of a Golf R. But there is one key difference that this car has that the Golf R doesn't have, and that is a proper Torsen Quattro system. And it turns this car into something quite spectacular, I have to say. The rear end drive you get coming out of corners means you can carry insane speed. and you get almost no understeer. For a car that's supposedly comfort and family orientated, I think this actually handles better than quite a few hot hatches. And that isn't actually only due to the proper Quattro system. This car has double wishbone suspension, meaning it can keep the car flatter round the tighter corners. So on a B road, I really think you'd struggle to get away from this car, even if you're in a high-end hot hatch. The only thing that tells you that this is a more family orientated comfy car is actually the steering. It's precise, but you have to put just a little bit more lock in compared to something like a Golf R or a Cupra. But because this has actually got dynamic steering, just like all the other VAG hot hatches, it means when you're going faster, you have to put less steering input in to turn you around a corner. So this car feels really dynamic. The Stage 1 tune has taken this from a pretty well sorted, pretty fast family car into something that I really don't think is any slower than an S5 on a B road. If anything, the front end actually feels a tad sharper because there's less weight over the nose, purely because this is a 2 litre, not a 3 litre V6. And the custom exhaust, whilst it may not pop and bang, it still gives you those really funny DSG farts. And it gives you just enough theatre to actually have quite a good amount of fun on a B road. And with the traction control off, you can actually get this car sideways. And it actually gets more fun to drive the wetter the road is. And for the UK, that's actually perfect. But look at that, even the first gear acceleration is really impressive. 0 to 60, this car will do 4.6 seconds. Exactly the same as an S5. And even after that, I think it'd keep up all the way up until about 100 miles an hour. But look, coming around a corner like this, just put your foot down and you can go. I can go around that corner in this as fast as I can do it in my Cupra. And that is pretty high praise. Well, we've seen what this car's like round town, on the motorway, and on some twisty roads. And I have to say, I am pleasantly surprised at how good this car is. For what it is, the performance is absolutely staggering. And I think if you're actually considering buying a Golf R, I would seriously look at one of these first, because it feels exactly the same in terms of pace and finesse on the road, except it actually feels a little bit better on the handling front. If you lowered this and gave it some stiffer springs, there is pretty much nothing on a B road that would get away from you under about £70,000. And as you can hear with a custom exhaust, you can actually make this car sound pretty good. Plus you still get the advantage of the efficiency of a 2 litre engine. Even after all that hard driving, we still managed 26.2 mpg. And I know for a fact on a long run, you can get about 45, which is a lot more than you'd get in something like an S5 or an RS5. Then in terms of finance, you'd be looking at about 2k down, £400 a month for a car like this. And keep in mind, that is pretty similar to a Golf R, yet you get slightly better handling, you get better looks. I mean, that's personal preference. It's a coupe body shape, I do think it looks better. And you get a better quality interior. There's almost no downside to having this kind of car. So if you are in the market for something like an S5, I'd look at one of these first. Keep some cash in your bank, modify the exhaust, give it a Stage 1 tune, and you've got something pretty good fun. And one final thing I wanted to mention is actually nothing to do with performance. It's the cup holders. I think they're brilliant. Every car should have cup holders like this. They fit pretty much anything you want, and they have little gripy bits. So even small cans don't rattle around when you're driving down the road. As always, I hope you liked the review. If you did, give it a like, and why not subscribe to our channel? Not only can you see more videos like this, you'll also be able to see all the stock we have for sale. My name's Tom, and you've been watching Paragon Cars. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.